Welcome, friends,
to the How-To Heretic.
I'm Uncle Mark.
I'm Uncle Dan.
And I'm Uncle Doug.
And this is your user's guide to life on the outside.
That's right. Leaving religion is the first step into a larger, better world.
But it can also be a scary world. Things work differently now.
Never fear. That's why we're here.
We're your audio uncles. And with help from good friends and experts in all sorts of fields,
We're going to share the stories and seek the knowledge to build a great life.
After all, we only get one that we know of, so you better make the most of it.
well, gents,
Hello.
here we are at episode 140. Nice round number. We're rounding third to our third anniversary. Well, it's been like 20 weeks, but we're really close. We're getting there.
We're very close. It's almost, we're basically there.
Time has no meaning anymore.
Yeah,
No.
It's a flat circle anyway, so what's the point?
It's just fucking flat. So it's not even a circle. It's not even that definitive anymore. So, Doug, you're going to start us off with some interesting information.
Yeah, I'm going to take us on a long walk through Haitian voodoo, which turns out to not be as scary as you think it is.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed when I learned that. And then I am going to chat a little bit about an upcoming event that we will all want to make sure we avoid or participate in, depending on your feelings about.
Yeah, yours is
Revelation.
actually as scary as people think voodoo is, but isn't.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And then I'm going to be joined by our old friend Bryce Blankenagel of the Naked Mormonism podcast to talk about a little super secret, but it's not really secret because we know it's there, little thing in the Mormon church, a little spy agency called the Strengthening Church Members Committee. And it might be one of the least boring parts about Mormonism. I don't know. So
Was Ministry of Truth taken? Was that the problem?
yeah, probably, or it's just not dedicated to truth at all. So join us for that. And quick note, I just want to say a quick thing to emailers or people who DM me stuff. Do me a favor, and when you email me something or DM, don't just put a link on an untitled email that looks like spam to me. So if you want me to read a link or you want me to read about something, give me a little intro so I know it's a human being and not some bot farm. Just give me a little.
You guys have to understand, Uncle Mark's an old man, and he has clicked far too many links that he shouldn't have, and now he's just afraid of links.
Yeah,
So-
I'm afraid of all sorts of sausage links. So do that for me. And if you're going to assign me homework, give me a little abstract about what it is. So I will be willing to click on it. Otherwise, I won't respond because I'm not going to click on it. That's just a little housekeeping. And without further ado, let's do that voodoo that we do.
Hey, Uncle Mark. I have here's this literally just happened this week to me. I sneezed and broke a rib. I don't know, I may not have broken it, but I severely injured my own chest at the sternum. And at first I thought, yeah, that's just a thing that happens. But now I'm wondering if maybe there was some sort of evil behind it.
Malevolent force.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, let me reply as my father always replied whenever we were injured. Well, that was a damn stupid thing to do. But then maybe
Fair.
you're right. Maybe there is a malevolent a force trying to affect some sort of injury upon you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Doug, I
Uncle
think
Doug,
we should
do you
ask
know-
Uncle Doug what he's up to.
Yeah, exactly. What have you been doing with yourself, Uncle Doug?
what's this doll for? Nothing at all. Well, dear uncles, as we have seen many times in the religions we have covered on this show, religions often, very coincidentally, seem to reflect the character, the history, and even the physical characteristics of the people who make up the membership of those religions.
Of course.
Go figure. This is why Mormonism is so white, Branch Davidians are so dead, and Scientology is so stupid. So, what would a religion look like if its origins were in perhaps the world's unluckiest place? A place that has been the center stage for basically all of the worst things that people have done to people for the past 500 years. A place that has had a run of terrible luck from the first voyage of Columbus straight through to the present day. A place that has been picked on and exploited by nearly every major power in the world.
Boston.
Boston.
I was going to say Nebraska. Whatever.
What would that religion look and feel like, and how would we, the perpetrators of much of the violence, that has happened to it perceive it. Well, today let's talk about Haitian Voodoo. Haitian Voodoo is a syncretic religion, meaning that it is a religion made up of several distinct traditions. And while it's easy to argue that every religion is made up of several older distinct traditions, syncretism refers more or less to religions influenced by other traditions and more to two distinct religions colliding like two oncoming trains and creating something completely different, which Haitian Voodoo certainly is. Although there may be upwards of 40 million adherents, it is widely considered to be one of the world's least understood and therefore most maligned religions.
40
Did you
million
say
people?
40 million?
40 million.
That is a surprising number.
It's a surprising number. It has a lot to do with the various repeated Haitian diasporas where Haitians have fled the island to the United States and all other countries looking for a better life and taken voodoo with them. So a lot like, there's more Irish in Boston than there are in Ireland. There are more adherents to voodoo outside of Haiti than there are in it, but almost all of them are Haitian or of Haitian descent, right? So, Uncle Dan, you took I was going to say, it is widely considered to be one of the world's least understood and therefore most maligned religions. And as we'll talk about, all of the reasons for this are not good. So if white guilt is not your thing, you should probably stop listening right now. And
Is that a thing? You'll have to explain that to me.
Well, we're going to talk a lot about. I think missionary Uncle Doug would probably need to stop listening at this point. Uncle Dan, you took a dive into Haitian voodoo all the way back in episode 11, focusing specifically on the voodoo spirit Baron Samedi.
Yeah.
Today we're going to go a bit deeper and try and at least perturb the surface of the entire religion. So let me know if you guys have had a different experience, and I'd love to hear from the listeners too. But growing up, voodoo was portrayed in American popular culture and even in the news as pretty much pure evil.
Yeah.
Every reference to voodoo was dark, emphasis on dark, magic, blood magic, voodoo dolls, the casting of spells, the raising of zombies from the dead, etc.
Necromancy. All that.
I mean, I remember there were references to voodoo in various movies, TV shows, and I remember the media even doing like an expose on it. I think it was 60 Minutes or Inside Edition, and none of the portrayals were positive or even instructive as to what voodoo was. It was some nebulous evil lurking in those dark and dangerous islands in the Caribbean.
Yeah, it was either going to be like the butt of a joke, as it was in the movie that I just saw. I just rewatched The Jerk, and there was that one little moment where, they got married, and they were both glad they had a religious wedding. The guy that lived in the building happened to be a minister, and then he's like a big voodoo guy or whatever. Or it was terrifying.
Terrifying.
Literally like magic that you could not stop that was going to get you.
Growing up for me, it was just my community considered it real as shit, not to be touched, not to even be thought of, right?
Right. It was somehow even like a little bit below, like more dangerous than Satanism.
Yeah.
So even when I started researching for this segment,
Sorry, Doug. I think because it was kind of felt very polytheistic.
right?
Like it was understood, even if it wasn't understood improperly. It was kind of understood like that.
Which
And it
again, as we'll
Also,
talk about,
black folks.
also black
Yeah, of
folks,
course.
as we'll
First
talk
and
about, everything people talk about voodoo in our popular culture is wrong. Everything, and even as I was researching for this segment, I kept hearing one word come up over and over in my mind, and that word was spooky. And that's part of my training as a white Utahn. What is and isn't spooky is in the eye of the beholder, and Haitian voodoo is most definitely outside of my white bread Mormon upbringing. But what sucks about that is it is a vibrant, interesting, deep, and fascinating religion practiced by a people far, far hardier and resilient than we are. But most of us have a very tarnished view of it. And when knowing what the Haitian people have been through and how kind and generous they are, and you split screen that against crazed American Karens who haven't yet missed a meal but whose roots are showing, aggressively coughing into the faces of healthcare workers, it's hard not to feel a little culturally inferior.
Yeah, their roots are showing in more ways than one.
Right. So, as we take a dive into this religion, we kind of have to run on a dual track as to why it is so misunderstood, so feared, and so maligned by outsiders. So, But before we begin, let's not forget that voodoo is a religion, and therefore, and unsurprisingly, we'll have a lot to answer for, just like any other religion. However, at least on the body count scale, it doesn't even rank.
Because nobody dies. They all come back as zombies.
because they keep bringing them back to life. That's the trick.
That's right.
I win.
My typical pronunciation disclaimer, I'm going to do my best, but I'm going to fuck some words up, so go easy on me. I would never jump down your throat for mispronouncing Nephi, Moroni, or Mohanre Moriankamer, so don't jump down mine. So, let's dive in. At its most fundamental level, Haitian voodoo is a mix of the West African Yoruba religion brought to Haiti by enslaved Africans and Roman Catholicism, which was forced on those same peoples by their Spanish and French enslavers. The word voodoo itself has several different meanings. It loosely refers to mysterious forces that govern the world, but also to several art forms, including dance and drum playing. Practitioners will use the term to refer to their religion, but they more commonly refer to themselves as those who serve the spirits, or Sevite, among other harder-to-pronounce names. Interestingly, the spelling of the word itself has become a subject of controversy. It is now commonly spelled Vodou, which is to differentiate it from Louisiana voodoo, spelled Voodoo, which is a related but pretty distinct belief system. This was also done because the Voodoo spelling has taken on many negative connotations, which that's how I remember it being spelled when I was a kid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Yoruba religion upon which voodoo is principally based is still very much in existence and practiced by the Yoruba people that number about 44 million and live mostly in Nigeria, Togo, and Benin in Western Africa. Of course, because of the transatlantic slave trade, there are descendants of the Yoruba in the U.S., all over the Caribbean, Brazil, Venezuela. As a result, influences from the Yoruba religion can be found in every corner of the Americas, and it heavily influences Cuban Santeria and Brazilian Candomblé. In fact, Voodoo, Santeria, and Candomblé are referred to as sister religions, and they are not in competition. In fact, one of the characteristics of Voodoo is that it not need be practiced exclusively. There are many Catholic and even Mormon Haitians that attend church every Sunday and still practice Voodoo.
Wow.
So,
Love that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about the beliefs of Voodoo, and then we absolutely have to talk a bit about Haitian history because it's both incredible and incredibly sad. One of the core beliefs of Voodoo comes from the Congolese tradition of Kanga, that's Kanga, which is the tying of the soul to something tangible. A misunderstanding of this belief is the origin of the not at all a thing voodoo doll, which we'll get to. Unlike Catholicism, voodoo does not have a centralized priesthood or hierarchy or a set of scriptures. And the attitude towards homosexuality and even transsexuality is as accepting as anywhere in the world. However...
Meaning not.
No, right. Well, I mean, there's places where it's more tolerated, and one of those places is in Haitian voodoo. There is some unfortunate homophobia and transphobia in Haiti, but that comes from the Roman Catholic influence. So thanks a lot, guys.
Of course it does.
Yay, Catholics.
Like Catholicism, it is a nominally monotheistic religion, but in both cases that term is being stretched to the breaking point. The main god and creator of the universe is called Grand Met or Bon Dieu, who is a remote and transcendent figure. Although there are forces and avatars of evil, there is no great antagonist akin to Satan. There is a pantheon of lesser deities known as the Iwa, a.k.a. Mysterie, Ange, or Les Invisibles. The Iwa function very much like the Greek, Roman, Mayan, and indeed the Catholic pantheons. After all, what are the Catholic saints if not minor gods with distinct personalities and responsibilities? The Iwa can be either kind or cruel in their dealings with people. The Iwa are divided into into distinct nations, there's more than two, which are based on how the West Africans were divided into quote-unquote nations by their slavers, based not on their origin, religion, or language, but on which port they departed from in chains.
Oh, my God. Wow.
The two largest groups of Iwa are the Rada and the Petwo. The Rada Iwa are the sweet-tempered and kind deities, while the Petwo Iwa are the forceful and violent ones, and are therefore associated with transgression and fire. It's worth mentioning that the Petwo Iwa, the evil ones, are thought to be more powerful than the Rada Iwa, and it's humans and the good that they do that help balance the scales. So it's just an interesting little side note.
That's ironically optimistic about human nature for
truly
For Haitians.
Yeah, of all people, right?
Yeah.
Many of the Iwa are direct correlations with Roman Catholic saints. The Iwa of agriculture, Azaka, is the voodoo version of Saint Isadora. The Iwa of love and luxury, Exili Frida, is the Mater Dolorosa. Dan Bella is Saint Patrick. The twins Marasa are the twin saints Cosmos and Damien, and it goes on and on and on. There's a ton of the Iwa that are direct correlations, and their visages are, slight variations on the very, Roman Catholic images of the saints.
Right.
Yeah. The most revered Rada Iwa, and the first to be saluted in voodoo rituals, is Papa Legba, who is the protector of gates and fences. And like the Roman goddess of the hinge Cardia we covered back in episode 135, while hinges and fences seem like silly things to us, they are the gateway to the home, and therefore of fundamental importance. Papa Legba is an old, bent-over, lovable man with a cane and a pipe, and is also the Iwa of the crossroads, specifically the cardinal points of the crossroads, right? This leads us to my favorite Iwa we're reading up on this, the Retwo Iwa Kalfu. Kalfu is an Iwa of the crossroads, but he's the Iwa of the in-between points of the crossroads. So he's kind of like just almost like the upside down, right? He's similar, but just a little bit different. He's depicted, you should look him up. He's depicted as a young, very handsome man dressed in a tailored red and black suit with a black top hat. Super cool looking. He looks a lot like Baron Samedi that you talked about in episode 11, Dan, except that he's not skeletal, at least in most cases.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, and while Samedi was a Loa, or spirit, Kalfu is an Iwa, or, minor god. His favorite drink, this is awesome, his favorite drink is rum infused with gunpowder.
Yes.
And he dispenses bad luck and misfortune. For obvious reasons, you should not speak to or in the presence of Kalfu.
Okay, let me write that down.
This is kind of interesting. Kalfu seems to be a direct correlation to the Yoruba trickster god Isu Eligbara, the sole messenger of the Yoruba pantheon to the world of humans, who therefore speaks every language and then also conveys the wishes of humans back up to the gods, and is also the god of the crossroads. So, all right.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah, right? Given that Haiti, as we'll discuss, is such a poor country, the dress code of voodoo is pretty casual, but one thing is pretty common is the use of black funeral clothing, so black frock coats or black veils, top hats, and sunglasses. It's hard not to be a bit jealous of this, especially because my dress code as a young Mormon was an overstarched white button-down, a clip-on tie, and Uncle Mark's old corduroy. Here's the thing. Voodoo focuses on kindness, generosity, calmness in the face of conflict, the family, the elderly, the community, a wholeness of being, and healing. So, where does this right? So, where does this reputation of an evil religion full of satanic rituals and possessions come from? Well, there's more than one reason, and like I said earlier, ain't none of them good. Voodoo ceremonies called dans, and not Uncle Dan's, but it's a Creole word for dances, consist of a ridiculous amount of drum playing and dancing, which at the best of times made European slavers uncomfortable. The drums are such an important part of voodoo that if you want to play one at a ritual dan, it takes years of apprenticeship to get there, and sometimes offerings are made to the drums themselves. This frenetic and unending dancing is meant to induce a trance-like state that would allow for corporal possession by an Iwa. This possession is seen as a positive thing in voodoo, but to outsiders it can be unsettling. When someone is possessed by an Iwa, their own soul is pushed aside for the duration of the possession. The possessed person is then dressed in the garb of the Iwa possessing them, and they take on the facial expressions and mannerisms of that Iwa. They become the central part of the dan, and everyone dances around them and kisses the ground in front of them. So it's not hard to understand why this would spook the fuck out of Phyllis Schlafly. Voodoo is trinket heavy, so altars and ceremonies feature all kinds of images, beads, statues, and talismans. The fact that the images are often Catholic saints, the beads are often Catholic prayer beads, the statues are often of Jesus, and the talismans are often crosses, has not sat terribly well with the Catholic authorities throughout the centuries. And
that was probably how they could hide their worship, right?
Very much so.
Yeah,
yes,
it's a subversive act, right?
It's truly that's one of the ways that they were able to camouflage their religion.
Yeah,
but it's also a sense of like you've got somebody teaching you a whole bunch of like rituals and a whole bunch. You've got a whole bunch of like built-in stuff that sounds kind of cool, and so you might as well just incorporate it.
Well, and that's the Yoruba religion, of which the African part of this religion is based, had that attitude. Like it just oh, that's an interesting story. Come on in, right?
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily try and defeat each other. They all kind of incorporated each other. But we have to talk a bit about the issue of animal sacrifice. Voodoo practitioners love them some animal sacrifice. The Iwas must be fed, and each Iwa has his or her favorite food and drink. Some like eggs, some like tubers, some like rum, but some like freshly slaughtered chickens and goats. So, to be fair, though, the emphasis of these sacrifices is the transference of the animal's life force to the Iwa, rather than on just the spilling of blood like the ancient Jews. But these sacrifices are ritual and so are often painful and needlessly cruel. This aspect of voodoo has done little for its reputation abroad. And given its history and poverty, perhaps we can see that cutting off the head of a chicken for a ritual from time to time, rather than, say, for dinner, may not be as much of a stretch after all. But I'm not here to condone animal cruelty.
I feel like, I'm guessing you might correct me, Doug, I feel like they're not really looking for converts.
It's not an evangelistic religion at all. In fact, it's so dissimilar to what we would consider to be, in our Western sensibilities, a religion, that it's kind of hard to wrap our heads around. But no, they're not trying to get people to join.
Yeah.
And I especially think people like us. Given our addiction to mechanized meat production and the nonchalance we pay to the suffering of the animals and the people responsible for meat packing, doesn't leave us with a lot of ground on which to judge.
No.
There are several...
no, I can still judge. I'm still pretty good at that, regardless.
He was raised Mormon.
There's very well-exercised muscles.
Yeah.
There are several very fringe practices or rumored fringe practices that have contributed to voodoo stigma. One, of course, is the rumor of voodoo zombification. While
that's the best part.
That's why I joined up. While certain drug cocktails are sometimes used in the dance to help participants achieve that trance-like state, the false rumor of zombification was popularized by an anthropologist named Wade Davis in a book titled The Serpent and the Rainbow. This book and Davis's research into a drug called tetrodotoxin and its use in these rituals has been widely discredited. But that didn't stop Wes Craven from making a movie based on the book starring Bill Pullman that did not paint Haitians in a particularly favorable light. But to be fair to Wes Craven, being a horror movie director, he meant no more harm to the Haitian people than he meant to the residents of Elm Street. So, as I mentioned earlier, there is the ubiquitous voodoo doll. Although voodoo practitioners believe that the soul can be tied to something in the tangible world, the voodoo doll is a bastardization of this belief. Voodoo is not at all about causing pain or exacting revenge, but the belief by outsiders in this practice has become so pervasive that voodoo dolls are sold as tourist attractions in Haiti to make a quick buck off the credulous.
Of course.
Of course. The widespread conception that this is what voodoo is about has not done much for its reputation, but it is not a thing. Voodoo dolls are not part of voodoo. And lastly, there is perhaps the most nefarious reason that voodoo has such a bad reputation in white America and Europe, and that's Haitian history itself.
Yeah.
I mentioned at the beginning what an awful history Haiti has had, and as widely known as that history is, no discussion of voodoo can be complete without touching on it. So Haiti's run of colossally bad luck began on December 5th or 6th, 1492, when the indigenous Taino people woke to see 3 enormous wooden ships off their coast.
Yeah.
They would have the terrible luck to be one of the first places that Christopher Columbus would set foot in the Americas, and the even worse luck to be the first place that he founded the very first European settlement in the Americas. For a deeper dive into what a historically monumental fucker Christopher Columbus was, go back and listen to Uncle Mark's segment in episode 55. In an echo of what would come, the settlement, Navidad, was overrun and destroyed by the natives before Columbus could return with reinforcements the next year. However, the island would be occupied and the inhabitants decimated by the Spanish and eventually the French, who in 1697 divided it in half, a divide which remains today between Haiti and Dominican Republic. The indigenous people, having been nearly wiped out by disease, were not suitable workers to man the gold mines or the sugar and tobacco plantations, so African slaves were brought in by the tens of thousands from West Africa. It was at this point that voodoo was born, partly because the religions, like we just talked about, of Africa at the time were not very exclusive, and very much because, like Uncle Mark said, this was a way for them to camouflage their religion and hang on to it. They could enthusiastically embrace the religion of their captors and in this way protect theirs. So, fun stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In 1791, the enslaved and free people of Haiti rose up and launched the Haitian Revolution. This conflict lasted until 1804, when Toussaint Louverture defeated the forces of Napoleon Bonaparte, and Haiti was declared an independent nation on January 1st. Now, this should be a really cool, this should be one of history's great stories.
It is an amazing story. It is incredible. It was the first free black republic, formerly slave.
The second republic in all of the Americas after the United States.
Yeah. It's an incredible story. It's the biggest underdog story ever, and it's amazing.
And it was the first country to abolish slavery, and the only country in world history established by a successful slave revolt. That's pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After the defeat of the French, the Catholic Church pulled out of Haiti for several decades. It seems that
Darn.
It seems like forcing your religion on others at the point of a gun loses its luster when the guns go away. This gave Vodou a foothold for several decades to become the national religion of Haiti, which it remains to this day.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. The revolution is a point of enormous and deserved pride in Haiti even now. However, this embarrassment to American and European slave-owning states would never be forgotten, and helps explain the suffering that was to come, as well as the widespread stigmatization of Vodou. In order to make an example of Haiti and dissuade others from following the same path, Haiti was isolated internationally and forced to pay massive war reparations to France. The United States invaded Haiti in 1915 and occupied the country until 1934, before leaving it pretty much no better than they had found it, which seems to be a pattern of ours. The U.S. has intervened militarily, financially, politically, and economically in Haitian affairs an unknown number of times, almost never for the better. But according to Howard Zinn, our interventions in Haiti have been pretty much continuous since the revolution. After our official occupation ended, several years of chaos ensued until Francois Papadoc Devoyer took power in 1956. The reign of terror he and his son Jean-Claude Baby Doc Devoyer lasted until 1986. This is a pretty, go read up on this if you don't know about it. It's pretty much as dark a history as...
It was hell on earth, and they had
the
Tonton Macout's secret police, and it was brutal. But good Catholics. They were good Catholics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then when they finally were out of power, the country was left in corrupt and violent leadership. And then, of course, there was the earthquake in 2010 that killed around 250,000 people and pretty much flattened the country. So it hasn't really caught a break, in spite of having one of the truly one of the proudest moments any nation could ever have. One of the few nations on the planet that defeated fucking Napoleon Bonaparte.
Right.
Except for maybe the British Empire, right? Truly amazing. So, is it any wonder that they have clung to their native-born religion with their fingernails and refused to let the religion of those who had so damaged the nation dominate? Is it any wonder that this religion would be based on healing and family? And also, is it any wonder that stigmatizing voodoo as a dark magic has been so pervasive in America? Could it be the latent racism and resentment for free black Africans in our DNA? Could it be resentment of slaves taking their fate into their own hands? Could it be religious jealousy that anyone would reject our Christian Lord? Could it be subconscious revenge for their revolution? The answer is yes. So, yeah, it's a truly remarkable religion and remarkable history, and so maligned, so terribly maligned by us in the West. So.
Yeah, I had no idea there were potentially that many adherents.
Yeah.
That's huge.
But that's the thing is, you can be, in fact, I forget who it was. It was a Haitian writer said, in order to be a good practitioner of voodoo, you have to be a good Catholic. So, like Mormons, you can't be a Mormon and a Catholic. So, but you can be a Mormon and a practitioner of voodoo. So,
well, not according to the Mormons, but
no, not according to the Mormons, truly. But that way, there's many people who identify as practitioners, but also identify as Catholic or other thing. Right. So it's no wonder there are so many, right?
Yeah. Well, it's like 10 times the number of Mormons, which I think is a nice little statistic to have tucked away in your brain if you're ever talking to the missionaries. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
So there you go. There's voodoo.
All right. Well,
Let's put a pin in it and move on. Racism.
Boom!
Uncle Doug,
Yes.
you know, it's what I like about sport. And you know, I'm kind of a fanatic about baseball, footed ball, golf ball, all the balls.
You're a big fan of balls.
Anywhere there's a ball, that's why I find the hockeyed puck challenging, but it's too flat. But what I like about sport is that you can tell who's who.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Whomst is whomst. You know who you're looking at.
Right.
And I feel like I wish there was a way in life to know that. You know?
You mean
Well,
like who's who and who you should trust and who you shouldn't?
Yeah. Who's on what team?
This is not leading into some kind of discussion of like the races, right?
Well, it could end up there. I don't know. It's Dan's segment.
After the patron-only content, I need to be very careful right now.
It is definitely going to eventually come back to the Jews, so don't worry about that part.
Everything does.
Well, look, we can get to the ways of knowing who's who or what and all of that, but first I need to talk about something that's happening, and I'm concerned about it, and I think we should all be concerned about it, and that is the end of the world. It is, my friends, upon us, and I have lots of evidence. The one that pushed me over the edge was a recent survey from Yahoo News and YouGov, which found that over 40% of U.S. Republicans and over 50% of people who watch Fox News as their primary source of information believe that Bill Gates is planning to implant microchips in all of us by slipping them into our coronavirus vaccines.
Is that how
would he do
microchips
that?
work?
Well, isn't there there's those multiple vaccines, right? If I'm going to get a microchip and I'm going to get a coronavirus vaccine, why not both?
Right?
know what I mean?
It's saving time and money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, listen, this is the apocalypse. Just ask John the Revelator. However, it's not the apocalypse that Christians are worried / excited about. Who knew that the actual apocalypse would come because people would rather believe conspiracy theory lunacy than just acknowledge that sometimes we need coordinated help of government agencies and private sector philanthropy, and that every now and then we might have to make personal sacrifices for the greater good of all. And as it turns out that while the Bible is terrifyingly wrong about what the apocalypse looks like and when it would happen, at least Christians can be proud that the Bible and its believers have been instrumental in making it happen.
That's
Now,
true.
Why would I feel like a group of ding-dongs buying into a silly conspiracy theory is a sign of an actual apocalypse? Yes, it's stupid, but is it any more stupid than believing in the power of crystals or homeopathy or Mormonism? No, it's
really.
about the same amount of stupid as those. But this popped up in just a few short months. And let me tell you something. 40% of Republicans is not a small number. About 30% of the U.S. population self-identify as Republicans. So 40% of that 30% is 12. 12% of the U.S. population is pretty convinced that the big boogeyman that's out to get them is the one donating millions of dollars to research into saving humanity from a global pandemic.
Can I tell you something? That is I honestly am surprised that that's a reassuringly low number in this country. Just 12%, I'm like, oh, we're okay.
Well,
We'll be fine.
that's kind of what I thought too for a second. And then
Yeah.
I thought to myself, well, 12%, that's almost 40 million Americans.
Oh, my God.
Who would rather think of super nerd Bill Gates as a cartoonish Bond villain than accept that there's just a horrible virus wreaking havoc right now, and a guy who has devoted considerable time and resources over the years to vaccine research might be able to help.
Yeah.
Well,
Now,
and,
here's the
you know,
thing.
not for nothing, but like on the level of extant Bond villains, you've got your Jeff Bezoses,
Right.
and you've got your what's the doofus from
Elon Musk?
Tesla, Elon Musk's, and Bill Gates just doesn't really have the gravitas of a Bond villain.
I saw someone tweet this, that if Bill Gates was dedicating his billions to tearing down democracies rather than saving lives through vaccines, he'd be all good with the right wing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Look, here's the thing. There have always been conspiracy nuts. There are lots of people out there who, for whatever reason, are just predisposed to want to reject the, quote, official story. It's just a goof of certain human brains.
Right.
But until this moment in history, those people were either kept in check by the rest of society or just pushed to the fringes and decried as lunatics. They were few enough and far enough between that their ideas would fade away as quickly as they arose. "What's crazy Jeremiah spouting off about this time?" someone would say of their local conspiracy theorist. "Oh, this time he thinks the world is flat." "Oh, crazy Jeremiah, always good for a laugh." And then they just put him in an asylum or stone him to death or something. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not how it works in the digital age. Now, ideas can spread as freely as herpes at a Jeffrey Epstein party at Mar-a-Lago. This is the time when no claim is required to be the least bit vetted before it's published and sent out to millions. When clicks and views are far more important in determining truth than sources and facts. When any three middle-aged white guys can just start a show and spew whatever nonsense they want out into the world with exactly zero accountability and no way to be held responsible for their actions.
Come at
You
me,
know
bro.
what? That's no way to talk about Eli and Heath and Noah. I think that's really cold and shitty. But
Or Frank and Dan.
Damn. Y'all got me. Look, this is the first time in history when the nutball conspiracy theorists have been able to connect with each other and magnify their dipshittery. Crazy Jeremiah can now start a Reddit forum where he meets Crazy William and Crazy Susanna and hundreds of other town loonies, and they can all spend countless hours in their basements honing and refining their endlessly baseless claims until they've formulated a narrative in which a series of unrelated facts are tenuously strung together in such a way that, when seen from exactly the right angle, appears to point to the incredibly unlikely possibility that the official story is an obvious cover and something far more sinister is afoot.
It's called the Glenn Beck effect.
Yeah. Also, it has become so easy for an enterprising doofus with a computer and some software to create stunningly professional-looking media presenting their wackadoo ideas. Before now, nutball publications looked like nutball publications. But it has become insanely easy to dress your turd of an idea up in all the accoutrements that used to be reserved for giant press organizations that actually had people to answer to about their content. So, now, not only are all the ding-dongs able to communicate with each other, they're able to create startlingly impressive YouTube videos that dazzle the normally non-conspiratorial thinkers into being taken in by their buffoonery, and suddenly, bam, 5G is going to kill us all. Why? No time to think about that. Just build your bunker and don't ask questions. I got to admit, though, the Bill Gates hatred is especially vexing to me. Look, I'm no big Bill Gates fanboy, okay? I actually really dislike the guy. I don't like his products. I don't like his personality. I don't like how he does business. Hell, the guy didn't really do any charitable giving to speak of for a really long time. It wasn't until his wife Melinda came into the picture that he gave much at all to charity. Now, that said, the guy is giving now. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is huge. It's one of the largest charitable organizations in the world. They've given well over $50 billion in charitable grants.
Wow.
Most of that goes to the global health organizations covering an extremely large range of health issues around the world. So yes, the guy's no saint, as anyone who has ever had to use Windows Vista can attest. He's certainly not the Antichrist, though. But isn't he, though? Isn't he? That's the other element that's fueling the current conspiracy renaissance, the final ingredient that ties together the whole moron gumbo: religion. Because once you get a person to agree to believe things that aren't actually possible, like talking donkeys and parting seas, you can lead their minds to almost anything. So, folks who would normally have no problem with Bill Gates, folks who have used his company's products for decades, are suddenly turning on him. And who's leading them down this path? They're pastors. Those followers of Jesus turning like vipers against the man who gives literally billions to charity because the conspiracy world has swirled its pig slop into the holy water. So, when you combine the paranoia of conspiracy nuts with the boners that zealots get for the long-awaited end times, what do you get? Well, you get people scanning every obscure news story for anything that could even remotely be considered a sign of the apocalypse. They read that fucking mess in Revelation. See Uncle Doug's 2-part exploration of that clusterfuck in episodes 59 and 60 of this very podcast. And look for anything that could be fulfillment of that prophecy. So, now we have a plague in the form of COVID-19. And we have seen lots of wildfires in California and Australia, and earthquakes here in Salt Lake, and locusts in Africa, and suddenly everybody's scanning everywhere for the number 666. They're absolutely certain that there will come a beast, just like in Revelation 13, who will try to make everybody take his mark. And what is that mark? Well, in the early 80s, a book by Mary Stuart Relfie called When Your Money Fails, The 666 System is Here, got everybody pretty hot and bothered about the notion that we were all going to be forced to get a UPC barcode tattooed on our heads.
Well, look, I don't know why you even bring that up, Dan. Everybody's read that book. Like, it was the Harry Potter of the time.
It's true.
Yeah.
That was surely going to be the mark of the beast.
Yeah.
More recently, companies were looking for ways to make transactions more secure or to make personal identification easier, and they started developing implantable RFID chips. Well, the end time folks just went crazy for that. You can't get a better mark of the beast than an implanted chip. That's got to be it, right? But here's the problem. No beast. Without a beast, the end times aren't real. So, the end timers have been trying different beasts on for size. Barack Obama was a solid contender. He was a liberal. He was convincing people to follow him. He had a fly that buzzed around him that one time.
That's right.
And best of all, he was black.
Yeah.
Disappointingly, however, he seems to have run his course without any discernible apocalypse happening. So, George Soros had been a great option. He's rich and liberal and Jewish.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Of course, that seems to be all they can actually pin on him, so they keep having to make up bullshit about him, which makes him frustratingly difficult to paint with the beast brush. Right. Which brings us to Gates. Upsettingly, he's not Jewish, and he's frustratingly white. So he was out of the beast running for a while.
Have you ever seen him dance? Did you ever see him dance at one of those product launch parties?
Oh, my God.
He dances
He's
like
the whitest man in the world.
He dances like Elaine from Seinfeld.
White.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But some of his money has gone to companies that are working on digital identification tech.
Done.
Boom! Mark of the beast! Yeah, baby. In the fall of last year, prophet, seer, and revelator Alex Jones blew the doors off the Gates Beast theory when he exposed ID 2020, a digital identification company that the Gates Foundation has given money to. They are working on tech that, I'll admit, sounds a little big brothery, but I can't find that much info about it. But not being able to find info is not going to stop a guy like Alex Jones from endlessly monologuing in that intolerable, gravelly baritone about the evil at hand.
That's just how deep the conspiracy goes.
Exactly. Yeah. So from there, the Gates as beast thought just bounced around in the fringes of the conspiratorial Christian subconscious, waiting for something to crystallize or to crystallize that concept as a surety. Enter COVID-19. Ooh. A plague! You guys, it's a plague! And you know what we need for this plague? A vaccine, which will save us, except that we're all secretly kind of worried that they're kind of evil now, because our good friend Sarah is in that mommy group, and they've been sharing some very convincing things about vaccines for a while. And who's tirelessly working to create a vaccine? Who's pouring millions of dollars into research? Mr. Microchip himself, Bill motherfucking Gates.
Figures.
Right? So what, you might say? What does one thing have to do with the other? Wake up, sheeple! By the way, spell check seems to be fine with the word sheeple, but only when it's in all caps. Anyway, wake up! Gates is obviously going to put microchips into the vaccine. He basically said as much in an AMA on Reddit. Not really, but kind of. But to what end, you might ask? What is the goal of this nefarious plot? Well, we don't know that yet, do we? Isn't it enough that it sounds really sketchy? But didn't Revelation say that the beast would have 7 heads and resemble a leopard, but with the feet of a bear and the mouth of a lion? Shut up! It's Bill Gates! You just have to see the metaphor, man. But didn't the Bible say that the mark of the beast was a visible mark on the right hand or the forehead, and that was willingly taken by people who worshipped the beast? Look, I'm not going to take that vaccine, and that's final. I love Jesus! And that's why a whole bunch of nice people are going to needlessly continue to die. The end.
Yeah, and it's amazing to hear people that wear a red hat on their with a symbol on their forehead everywhere they go.
Right?
Truly
screaming about microchips and this is the power of terrible information and lies. Is that it's bad enough that the MAGAs are out there and these Q conspiracists and everything. It's Memorial Day weekend. They're all out there co-infecting not each other and everybody they come across.
Totally.
And they're going to get sick and die in huge numbers because of that. But then it's even crazier that when there is a way to not even get it, they're going to refuse to get it because of something in the book of Revelations. Because
at that point, like the biggest stretch you can imagine. If you just read Revelations 13, this couldn't be what it's talking about.
Right.
It's it's not clear because as you helped us learn in that book, Uncle Doug, it's bananas. The book doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I guess you could interpret it to mean almost anything.
Well, that's exactly right.
People have been doing that for centuries.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I was reading an interesting thing about how in the year 1666, they thought that was going to be the end of the world because 666 was in the year, and that was the year of the Great London Fire, and that was the year of a plague. It was a really bad plague year for London. So, Londonites were convinced that it was the end of the world. This has been happening forever.
Oh, they thought so in the year 666. They thought so in the year 1000.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we thought so during
2000.
We thought so during Y2K, for fuck's sakes.
Well, that's exactly 2000. But what I was going to say
2012, the Mayans had a thing, and Christians were like, "That's going to be it."
These
that's
people
not even your religion.
They're not only casually going to get sick and spread this thing, that when there is a way to prevent from even getting it, they're going to refuse to take it. And at that point, it is surely natural selection taking place. At that point, it is surely just going to, I don't celebrate anybody dying, but for fuck's sake, like if you're so stupid we can't stop you, that sanity and reason and learning can't stop you from doing this to yourself, well,
it does seem like a direct assault of
shorter
Darwin
lines at the
on
DMV.
religion.
Yeah.
Well, I love how the beast who puts the mark on people is basically like the number 3 in Al Qaeda. He just keeps getting blown up, and then someone else takes his place. Right? Like it's not one guy; it's just a continual now it's this guy. Oh, it's this guy.
Yeah, he's like, why do I have to wear a red jersey? Shut up, get out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Get in the game, kid. Well, you've convinced me, Dan. I'm not going to get. Here's what I want. I don't want the vaccination, but I do want the microchip.
That's exactly it. That's the right choice.
Yeah, I'm going to split that baby. So, well, with that medical advice dished out from a podcast, why don't we move on?
Let's do it.
Hey, boys,
Hello.
friends, uncles.
Oui.
Are you okay?
Oui.
Listen, we do this show week after week. It is free for the public. They can listen to it at their will. But some people have this feeling in their gut that maybe they should be contributing, that maybe they're getting enough out of this that kicking in a buck or two every now and then wouldn't be such a bad idea, and we owe them thanks.
Indeed.
So, I'm going to, we got some folks to thank. The first one is the future Mrs. Enright. So good luck to her on that.
There have been more than a few of those. So.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
I almost hope that you don't succeed for your own sake on that front. And then the hi Heath. And then we have two others, both of which are going to get sanctified. So Uncle Doug,
It's my turn.
I would like you to give a saint to Matthew.
Okay, Matthew. Your saint is Saint Tabitha von Chalamet the Pure of the Sudetenland. She is the patron saint of unredacted governmental reports on agriculture. Gila monsters.
Wait, I'm very curious about all the redacted ones.
That's a different saint.
Okay. I just all the secrets about artichokes this year. I'm just dying to know.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Yeah.
She's also the patron saint of Gila monsters and underwater-themed youth dances.
Wow. Those are good.
That's a premium saint, motherfucker.
That's a very good saint.
Premium.
So, Matthew, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
And I am going to give a saint to the Coffee Mancer, which is a great name, and prepare to be disappointed by your saint. So your saint is Saint Samantha of Two Towns Over. She's just that two over from where you are. And she is the patron saint of non-paddle boats and of large factories that make things, but also that make food items, but have to declare that they make stuff with nuts also, so that there's an allergy warning, and the French.
Wow.
So
I feel like it got a little complicated in the middle, but you kind of pulled it out with a certain je ne sais quoi at the end.
yeah, I don't make these things up. They're
No.
these are official saints.
It's in the big book of saints, but we
Yeah.
have checked out the only copy from the library, so you're going to have to wait till we're done with it
That's right.
to prove that we're right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for your contributions to our little program.
Indeed.
If other folk would like to do that, if you listening at home would care to join the ranks of these fine contributors, you can do so by going to our Facebook, to our webpage, which is howtoheretic.com, and clicking on the support link. And then just you choose how much you want to give. It's whatever you want.
Yeah.
We're not picky.
Infinite money, and if you can't do that, stars are free. Come on, people, hit us up with 5 stars. That spreads the word, the good word.
Yeah. You
all
can
the
even
people
tell
out
somebody
there.
about us.
Yeah, you can tell somebody about us. And remember, we're on YouTube if you want, with individual segments, if you want to send those around to people. That helps too. So thanks, everybody, for all you contribute. And if you can't, don't feel guilty. Just lose a little sleep.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's finish up this show.
Woohoo! So a couple weeks ago, I did a segment on Operation Snow White, which was a massive espionage and dirty tricks campaign carried out by the Guardian Office, Scientology's Black Ops spy agency. And when I was writing that segment, I suddenly recalled the very mysterious, purposefully obscured Mormon one that still exists, but I couldn't remember its totally forgettable anodyne name. So I DM'd my friend Bryce Blankenagel, he of the madly deep dive Mormon history podcast Naked Mormonism, to ask him if he remembered what it's called, and boy, did he. So I've invited Bryce here today to talk about the Strengthening Church Members Committee, or as I like to call it, the LDS-CIA. Bryce, welcome back to the How To Heretic.
Thanks so much for having me, Uncle Mark. It really is a pleasure, and I mean, this is my forte, man. I love talking about shadow stuff that the church is up to.
Yes, you probably more than anyone else. I'm not sure who's dug quite as deeply and for as long as you have. So you are a blue ribbon shit disturber for those guys, and we'll get
I wear it
and
proudly.
we'll get to what they know about that in a bit. So let me give a very brief background to this Latter-day Snitches spy game for boys, and you can tell me what I got wrong. Okay?
Okay.
So
I doubt it.
Mormonism used to not only have an actual for-real army, the Nauvoo Legion, in its rabidly anti-American early days, but a secret army of sorts as well called the Danites. We'll get into them another time. In addition to its overt and covert armies, it had a very overt, straight-up murderer named Orrin Porter Rockwell, and a lesser-known but equally homicidal one named Wild Bill Hickman. Because in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, "Gather unto ye all manner of spies, thugs, assassins, secret armies, because the truth needs murderers, and my love needs to be expressed via extrajudicial murder and blood atonement."
Blood atonement. I was hoping you would say blood atonement. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so
yeah,
good.
of course. It's hard to not talk about it with these people.
Yeah.
So when Mormon church founder Joseph Smith was doing a little stretch in the Liberty Jail, he wrote a bitchy letter about how some committee should be set up to keep track of all the haters of him in the church, because, what harm has ever come from keeping lists of enemies when you're so singularly good at making them?
Yeah, Joseph's list.
Joseph's list. So this letter was codified in Scripture as Doctrine and Covenants, section 123. We shan't bore the good people with its daunting length and skull-crushing tedium, but it is Mormon Scripture. And as far as I can tell, Bryce, it's hard to know when exactly what we know today as the Strengthening Church Members Committee, or as I like to call it, the David O. McKGB, deep ward ball cut there, the official Black Ops Department of Corporate Mormonism became an official thing. But it's at minimum since 1990 when something called the Pace Memorandum, a secret internal church document, leaked. It's a description of investigation by General Authority Glenn L. Pace, who was a very high-ranking church mucky-muck at the time, looking into scores of claims of satanic ritual abuse perpetrated by members against other members. In this secretive...
Also known as D&D.
Yeah, that's right. In it, the secretive committee is named by Pace, and he refers further action to them. Historian D. Michael Quinn writes about the Strengthening Church Members Committee in his book, Mormon Hierarchy Extensions of Power. Here's a couple quick excerpts. Building on files while Ezra Taft Benson was an apostle related to surveillance of LDS professors and students suspected of being left-wing, liberal, communist, or socialist, staff members of this now centralized committee began maintaining files on every member of the church regarded as critical of LDS policies or too liberal.
Right.
He later continues, statements considered controversial about LDS policy to national media are also targets for these files. In addition, the committee uses operatives to obtain tape recordings of every Mormon who gives presentations at public forums regarded as suspicious. As a glimpse into the extent of these files, a history professor at Utah State University, Ross Peterson, was informed during a meeting at LDS headquarters in 1990 that his surveillance file included an anti-war statement he made as an undergraduate in college.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so...
That's real great. Real great.
And a lot of listeners might remember this moment. In 2012, in a BBC BBC Two documentary in 2012, that's a lot for me to get my mouth around, journalist John Sweeney asks both church spokesman Michael Purdy and Apostle Jeffrey R. Holland about the Strengthening Church Members Committee, and both are deeply spooked and caught off guard by the question.
Right.
Purdy first denies any knowledge before confirming its existence a few seconds later as he gasps for air like a fish. And Holland, not a bright man, flails just as badly trying to play it down as some obscure polygamy watchdog in a basement office, but he wouldn't even know where to find it if he tried.
You can crawl over or under or around the SCMC.
Yeah, exactly. So, first deny, then evade, then panic. The body language is hilarious.
Yeah, it's an iconic video clip. I encourage people to look it up. Really amazing.
It's deeply uncomfortable. So, much more recently, through a series of odd circumstances, the podcaster known as Radio Free Mormon found out the committee likely had a file on him and was given the number of a current high-ranking member of the committee, Elder Timothy J. Dykes, which Radio Free Mormon called and spoke to. Dykes did indeed have a file, or alluded to the fact that they had a file on the dissident Mormon podcaster, but demanded his real name in order to discuss it further, which Radio Free Mormon declined because betraying yourself is only cool if you're still a Mormon. So, Bryce, how'd I do? Did I get the basics of what we know about this Mormon espionage program?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually attribute the formation of it to, obviously under the presidency of Ezra Taft Benson in the 1980s, I attribute a lot of that to the influence of Mark Hoffman on Mormon history. And we can spend a bit of time on that, but really the fundamental problem that anybody has when they want to look up information on the SCMC is that it's a blackout. There's almost nothing about it except a couple of blog posts, a very thin Wikipedia page, and then a very brief Fair Mormon article that's like, it doesn't exist, but it sort of does exist, but it's, kind of the Jeffrey R. Holland stuff. So there's no official statement from the church about what the SCMC is or whether or not it even exists. So what do? What do we go with? Well, instead, I chose to take a look today more at the history of the church's clandestine efforts and the utilization of these various shadow enforcement squads. You alluded to them with Joseph Smith in the Liberty Jail in Missouri and the Danites. I want to walk through a little bit of that history and how it was brought over into Utah and implemented into Utah, and kind of the history of how that all kind of played out leading up to Mark Hoffman and Ezra Taft Benson in the 1980s when the SCMC was officially formed, because this is history that Mormons don't know this history, right? If the church obscures the historicity of the Book of Mormon, they're definitely going to do everything possible to ignore the church's history of shadow enforcement squads and assassination rings.
Yeah, look, the secret to staying a faithful Mormon is to know almost nothing about Mormon history.
Absolutely.
That's the only way you can pull it off.
Yeah, and there are a few, a number of my colleagues are, members of the church who believe that it is true, but are historians who have written extensively about these topics, and I can't even begin to wrap my mind around that. I mean, even Dan's mom is an example of somebody that falls into that camp.
Yeah.
So in order to put a pin in the beginning of this, I'm going to the Brother of Gideon Society, right? So in Kirtland era church, this is Joseph Smith started the church in New York. Then he was exiled from New York, moved the church to Kirtland. He was exiled from Kirtland, moved the church to Missouri. Exiled from Missouri by order of the governor, moved the church to Nauvoo, where he was summarily assassinated. But this traces its lineage all the way back to the Kirtland era church and the formation of the Kirtland Safety Society, which was the bank that the church formed in order to print their own money.
Right.
They needed to be able to enforce and keep people within line of buying and selling and speculating on the banknotes that they printed. William Wines Phelps was one of these people who suffered the wrath of the Brother of Gideon Society. But unfortunately, there are only 2 contemporary documents that exist that even allude to the existence of the Brother of Gideon Society. So we don't really know much about it. We just know that was the earliest prototype that formed the foundation for the Daughters of Zion, which were later named the Danites, right?
Yeah.
And the Danites were super useful. They were first implemented against 2, super cool cats in early Mormonism, David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery, right?
Yeah.
If people don't know those guys, Oliver Cowdery was the scribe for the Book of Mormon, and both David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery were, 2 of the 3 witnesses of the gold plates, right?
Yeah.
The Danite Manifesto gave them 72 hours to leave town or their blood would run, right? They were the salt that had lost its savor. It was good for nothing but to be trodden underfoot, according to Sidney Rigdon.
Right.
So the Danites in Missouri, they intimidated elected officials and forced them to sign documents exempting the Mormons from certain laws under duress. They ambushed Captain Bogart's troops at Crooked River. They raided and pillaged local non-Mormon settlements. They stole wagon trains of arms and supplies from the Missouri militias. They were really, really bad dudes. And finally,
bunch of assholes, really.
A bunch of assholes. And often doing these things, if you can make it any worse, in blackface to disguise
Oh, my God, of
their
course.
identities.
Yeah. Right. Classic.
But unfortunately, we had a couple of defectors within the ranks of the Danites. We had Dr. Samson Avard and Thomas B. Marsh, who defected from the Danites, and they provided the state of Missouri with a copy of the Danite Manifesto, which gave Oliver Cowdery and David Whitmer 72 hours to leave town. And that ended up landing Joe and 50 of his friends in jails all across Missouri after the surrender at Far West and Adamant-Diomen during the Missouri Mormon War. It's really bad. They all ended up breaking out of prison, and they fled to the new Mormon settlement that was in Illinois after Lilburn Boggs signed the Mormon extermination order and said, "You can't be Mormon in Missouri. Get the fuck out." And in Illinois, they could exercise lawlessness with absolute impunity. It's truly remarkable.
Right.
So Nauvoo Joseph Smith learned from the mistakes of Missouri Joseph Smith, and he understood that quality control mechanisms needed to be in place to make sure that the most trusted elites could indeed be trusted. And this worked to a point, but a few slipped through the cracks, and they made life really hard for Joe throughout Nauvoo. Notably, John C. Bennett. He was a member of the highest-ranking offices of the church. He defected, wrote a huge expose, and the Mormon settlement was gripped with that expose for the following 2 years until Joseph and Hiram were dead. However, Joe's personal friend from back in the New York days, they were childhood buddies, Porter Rockwell, he was head of the Destroying Angel Company of the Danites. He attempted to assassinate Governor Lilburn Boggs, who kicked the Mormons out of Missouri in the first place. So it wasn't all about just intimidating judges and then vetting new members of the leadership. These guys actually did commit murder. And then Joseph Smith was arrested in Dixon, Illinois in 1843 by constables from Missouri working on special orders from the governor at the time. They wanted to extradite Joseph Smith to answer for his war crimes in Missouri, for treason, for murder, for larceny, for arson. When they tried to extradite him, a company of Danites found the group as they were headed towards Missouri, and those Danites arrested the sheriffs and brought everybody into Nauvoo, into Joe's little safe haven, and then those sheriffs who arrested Joseph Smith in the first place barely escaped Nauvoo with their lives.
Jesus Christ.
Obviously, this causes the non-Mormon settlements to lose their fucking minds!
Yeah.
Mormonism was so damn powerful in Illinois, and fury grew over the power and the wealth of the Mormon leadership in Nauvoo. And, of course, dissenting voices from within the church grew along with it. And eventually, 7 trusted Mormon elites published the Nauvoo Expositor, which was an expose of Joseph Smith and polygamy and Mormon politics, Joseph's presidential pamphlet, and just general abuses of power in the Nauvoo government, hiding criminals and fugitives from justice, and a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
So that Expositor printing press was destroyed at the behest of Joseph Smith as mayor, as prophet, and as commander-in-chief of his Nauvoo Legion, which you alluded to in your opening
his little
essay.
army.
Yeah. So he held 3 pillars of society in his palm: government, religion, and military, right?
Right.
Absolute power corrupts.
Yeah.
So because the Expositor printing press was destroyed at Joe's request, criminal charges were filed against Joseph and Hiram, and martial law was declared in the city, and the Danites were on a constant night watch of the city's most valuable assets, including their own printing press and Joseph Smith's Nauvoo mansion where he was sleeping at night. During this time, Illinois was on the brink of war, and the anti-Mormon newspaper, the Warsaw Signal, published court records from Missouri back in 1838 during the Missouri Mormon War concerning the Danites, and that ginned up public fury against the extremely dangerous religion that was Mormonism. They also declared themselves a sovereign city-state to Congress, which that's
that
kind
goes
of an
over
act of
really
treason.
well.
Yeah. It's kind of you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to like make a government inside of a government.
That won't elicit a response.
Yeah. So eventually, with war on the very, on the horizon between the state of Illinois militias and the Nauvoo Legion, Joe eventually agreed to be arrested, and he was assassinated in a drunken gunfight where he wounded 3 men with his own pistol and possibly killed 2 of those guys.
Wow.
So, with the prophet, military leader, and mayor dead, a schism crisis ensued, and the Darwinian principles of social movements provided that only the most ruthless leader walked away with the largest contingent of Mormons.
Yeah.
Bloody goddamn Brigham Young, the Hitler of Mormonism, with 4 universities and a city bearing his name.
I know. He was ruthless, but he was also just kind of a dumbass, and it's so hilarious to me that there are 4 universities named after this utter piece of garbage.
But he was also an absolute autocrat. And he ruled his empire through a system of meritocracy and nepotism. And the merits were how well you carried out the mission of building the kingdom of God. And whatever you were willing to do that proved that you were a ruthless person who was capable of doing whatever Brigham Young requested or demanded, that's what got you elevated through the ranks in Utah. And also, along with that, granted you more wives, coincidentally.
Right. Sure.
So they got out to Mexico. It fucking sucked out there. First off, Native Americans were all over their new promised land, so that had to be dealt with immediately.
Rude.
Famine and pestilence struck. Wars broke out off and on between the Mormons and the Native Americans, and usually resulted in mass casualties for the natives, who then resorted to pillaging the Mormon settlements just for survival. And then the Compromise of 1850 carved out the Utah Territory out of Mexico, and it instated Brigham Young as governor of the slaveholding theocracy.
Right.
So absolute fealty to Zion was required if you wanted to live peacefully in Utah. So Brigham's governorship was set to end in 1858, and he refused to step down, which riled the Mormons up into an anti-government frenzy. Defectors broke off with wagon trains passing through Utah to California during the gold rush, and upon their arrival, they would share information with the press, or apostate newspapers would crop up in Utah before they were immediately destroyed or they were threatened out of existence. So opposition outside of and within Utah was growing, and it needed to be quashed, so Bloody Brigham Young organized the Mormon Reformation period. So the Mormon Reformation means that every member of the church, every single person living in Utah who was a member, had to be interviewed by their bishop and rebaptized.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
Yes.
Everybody.
And punishments followed for anybody with a faltering testimony. This is when the home teaching program started, in order to keep very close tabs on members and report everything back to fucking headquarters in Salt Lake City, right?
Just open spying.
Open spying, yes. That's how the home teaching program started, was during this Mormon Reformation period. They also instated dress codes and other very cult-like and totalitarian decrees that members had to follow. And if you didn't, well, the Danites might show up. The Danites were really active at this time, including Porter Rockwell, Bill Hickman, Hosea Stout, Jedediah Grant, known as Brigham's Sledgehammer. They were active, but a lot of it was just intimidation tactics, but sometimes in making folks just disappear. And whenever somebody from the community disappeared, the members of that community knew better than to ask questions or talk about the disappeared person ever again.
Of course, they completely understood. It was like Stalinist Russia.
Yes, yeah. Somebody gets sent to the gulag, somebody disappears, you just don't talk about them. You don't ask questions.
Yeah.
So during this period, President Buchanan organized a federal militia to remove Bloody Brigham from his seat of governor by force. So the Mormons prepared for war, and any wagons passing through Utah in 1856 through 58 were regarded with general skepticism. During this time, Apostle Parley P. Pratt was murdered by a guy in Arkansas after stealing his wife. and a wagon train that was passing through at the time was blamed for it. So Brigham Young claimed that this wagon train was full of government spies who were going to bring the downfall of the kingdom of God. And then the Mormons murdered every single person under the age of 7 in this wagon train.
Over the age of 7, and then they redistributed the children to the local community, right?
Thank you. I misspoke. Yes, every person over the age of 7 was just murdered in cold blood.
Yeah.
And that just added another cool 120 people to the death toll of thousands of Native Americans by this point.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. And we could get into Wakara and slave trading and gun running and the tumultuous relationship between Brigham Young and Wakara. They're kind of like Rachel and Ross, off again, on again type of relationship, but it's maybe for another time.
Right.
So as Buchanan's troops were coming into Utah, they were passing through Nebraska and Wyoming. The Mormon militia, the Danites, guerrilla terrorized the troops as they were trying to unseat Brigham Young. But then a deal was struck, a stalemate was reached, and Brigham stepped down and invited his non-Mormon successor into the territory to be the new governor. But Buchanan's troops, because Mormonism at this time was so very insular and isolationist, Buchanan's troops also instated some non-Mormons into other government positions like judges and administrators, congresspeople. But those people were so terrorized by their Mormon coworkers that most of them fled the territory within just a few years of getting the job.
Right, of course.
So fast forward a few decades, Utah was again riled up into anti-government fury for the multiple anti-bigamy laws that were passed at the federal level and for the government's efforts to enforce those anti-bigamy laws. Also, it kind of sucked that slavery was going on and that slavery was no longer legal. It's kind of like the South. You know, Utah was considered a state just like the South was, a slave state. When you structure your economy around a certain amount of your workforce being slave labor and you have to start paying those people, it kind of sucks for the people who own those people, right? Shed a tear for the slaveholders.
Yeah.
For my cracker ancestors.
What a pity.
Yeah. So eventually the church caved, polygamy was outlawed, and Utah officially gained statehood in 1896. And then into the 1920s, 1930s, 40s, various people were excommunicated for publicly advocating polygamy, while simultaneously many of the apostles and the prophets themselves had multiple wives. So you could have multiple wives. You could even, like solemnize new polygamous marriages. You just couldn't publicly advocate for it.
Right.
And it was through these clandestine spying groups and efforts, it wasn't SCMC yet at the time, but it's still the same thing, that they were able to root out those people, find out what they were publishing, newspaper clippings about those people, and, find out who they are and excommunicate them.
Right.
So the church retained relatively comfortable control through kind of the 1930s all the way into the 1970s with only a few hiccups here and there. However, a crafty little dude started making a name for himself in Mormon history named Mark Hoffman. And this guy...
Yeah. Now, you can summarize real quick, but Doug did a really deep dive on him a couple weeks ago. But summarize him so someone listening for the first time would know.
Yeah, for sure. So he bought and sold a shitload of documents, and some of them were stuff that he just made in his basement. So after he was discovered, after he blew himself up and killed a couple people and he was thrown in jail, the church president at the time, Ezra Taft Benson, wanted a way of keeping a systematic eye on everybody, not just potential problem children like Mark Hoffman. So he formed the SCMC, as best we can guess, sometime in the mid-1980s to spy on everybody and to ensure that the members of the church are loyal. And from that point forward, SCMC has remained in the shadows, and as near as we can figure, it's been utilized to assassinate the characters of every high-profile excommunication from that point forward. Its first tour de force really was the September 6th. These 6 historians and public speakers who were writing critical history about the church that it didn't like, or not just history, but also social commentary and women having the priesthood authority. And the church didn't like it, and the SCMC figured heavily into compiling the dossiers about all of these people and getting all of their statements pulled out of context or whatever the case was necessary in order to have the excommunications go forward, to paint them as true apostates.
Right.
So you're a member of the church and you've ever even written a Facebook post or a blog post that isn't perfectly awesome about how great the church is, you probably have a file. You can't see it. You don't have access to it. You have absolutely no way of knowing the contents of that file. They just collect all of that data without you clicking agree on any terms of service page.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly. And it used to be that this kind of clandestine bullshit was dependent on human-to-human contact, or at least somebody going through your garbage or your mailbox. And they still probably do that.
Right.
But
it's
now,
a cyber age now,
it's so easy to monitor everybody on social media.
Yep.
And so,
fun fact for everybody, the government's largest NSA office is in Ogden, fucking Utah. Staffed by majority of Mormons. Super
that
awesome.
Can't be anything but a coincidence.
Yeah, it's pure coincidence, of course.
Yeah, so I took my name off the records 15 years ago, Bryce. So I don't know if they would have had anything on me. I don't know if they're still tracking, people like our podcast, which none of us have our names in the church, but we agitate against the crimes of Mormonism fairly frequently. So I would imagine there's some record. And now you have not taken your name off the church records.
That's correct.
So I understand that you tried to contact the Strengthening Church Members Committee to see what your file might say.
That is correct as well. So if anyone wants to hear the phone call, as well as hear myself as well as my two panelists talk about the phone call, you go listen to Mormon Happy Hour episodes. It's I think like 71 through 73 or something like that. It's
I think that's right.
Yeah. So Mormon Happy Hour, that's where we play the recording. We talk about this issue. We do like 2 hours of recording just discussing the church's clandestine efforts and how this figures into their ability to cover up abuse that happens in the church, obviously, as well. And the SCMC's work in doing the leg work, the stuff that takes the time, collecting information to compile dossiers on people like McKenna Denson and other public advocates against the church, as well as people within the church like Sam Young, right? We called Elder Dyke's office. We tried to talk to him, and we were met with an answering service, a very kind secretary. Yeah. And it was very clear that she had a hard couple of days, because we called at the same time that a lot of people called, as Radio Free Mormon had just leaked onto the ex-Mormon spheres the direct phone call or phone number to the SCMC office, Elder Dyke's office. We assumed she had a hard day, but it became abundantly clear to us that the only way we could access or receive any information about the contents of our folder was by talking to our bishop. And notably, one of my co-panelists, Leslie, she suffered abuse by her bishop. So if she wants to know the contents of her file, she can't go to that bishop and ask him, because that's not how reality works. That's insane. It's an insane proposition. Yes. And I think it's important for people to understand, yes, they're snooping social media, and there are allegations on some of the subreddits that they have sniffer programs that can sniff stuff out, that they're running, in email servers. But I think probably the backbone of this snitching program is still person-to-person stuff. There are people in your ward spying on you right now. Yeah. Right? There are people in your community kind of keeping track of what they consider what is appropriate behavior for you and what is not. Yeah. And to me, that's insane. That's an insane way to enforce an orthodoxy, rather than just let people kind of be who they are and come and go and be part of a thing because they see value in it, or leave it if they don't. Right. It's like it's a cult or something. And only the utmost. I guess you could compare it to a cult of some kind. Yeah. Well, and we should really let's spend a little bit of time just discussing what it says about that institution that requires having stuff like the SCMC, and more than that, having such deep roots of clandestine, dare I say, secret combinations within the structure of the church from the very foundation of it. What does it say about that institution that requires these Orwellian spy agencies in order to, retain like this very, I don't know, I guess draconian control over their membership?
I think it says that it is an institution from jump, from baked right into the bread. It's an institution that is deeply insecure about its truth claims and about its history.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a bad thing, Bryce.
And also requires people to be ignorant in order to ensure that compliance.
Right, and part of this espionage program is not only controlling members, but a desperate attempt to control its own history, and to control what's known about its own history that has become increasingly difficult in the information age. So
right, and if somebody is successfully branded as an apostate, not a single word that comes out of their mouth will be regarded as credible by any members. Right, like that was the most tragic result of the September 6th back in 1993 was these were critical scholars who, some of them had worked for BYU, some of them had worked for the church at some point in their careers, who had been writing history. And not when I say critical history, I say critical because it wasn't the party line. It wasn't the correlated narrative of history that the church has been manufacturing for 150 years. Right.
It was following the proper methodology to arrive at what a history is.
Right.
And that was unacceptable.
And this was coming at the infancy of the feminist Mormon history movement. And the book Women in Authority really was a scourge on the church leadership because it made the historical case that women exercised the priesthood the same way that the men did in Nauvoo, and that it was largely due to Brigham Young that shut it down in the hiatus period of the Relief Society from 1845 until 1867 when he allowed it to be reorganized. And that women did have authority under Joseph Smith to exercise the priesthood. And basically anybody who was attached with that suffered some repercussions or was a member of the September 6th who were excommunicated. That has scared away critical scholarship about women having the priesthood for decades following it. The church has still... The blight that the Mormon history community has suffered because of that blow still remains to this day. And it truly is an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, and it was purposeful intimidation, and clearly it's worked. So
it's effective. Yep.
Well, listen, Bryce, thank you so much. I'm a little embarrassed you came so unprepared with so little information.
I'm sorry. I'm terrible at my job.
Pretty tragic. So listen, you are fantastic, and
thank you.
If listeners want to, if for some reason they don't know who you are and where to find you, who are you and where do they find you?
Right. So I do a couple of podcasts, Mormon related. So Naked Mormonism, that's a serialized history. Hey, we're like 4 days away from Carthage, so it's a really intense time. A lot of the stuff that we talked about today is, it's all stuff that I know from researching about that. I also do current events, Glassbox podcast. Thanks so much for inviting me on to talk about this. This is
you're welcome anytime, man.
This is stuff that I just salivate as soon as I got that message from you. I'm like, oh, I cannot.
I figured, and someday soon we'll be looking at this conversation in your file together. So
exactly.
All right,
we need a leak. We need a leaker.
Come on, leak. All right, thanks, Bryce.
Thanks,
Let's
Uncle
move
Mark.
on.
Take care.
Well, friends, that's it for this week's show.
Hey, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at howto@howtoheretic.com.
Oh, or if you are a spy listening to this at Temple Square, why don't you send me a little cryptic message about it at 903-88-HOW2, which is 903-884-6986. I'm also on Twitter. You can spy on me there at HowToHeretic.
And thanks to our amazing patrons.
And thanks to Cody Layton for editing the show.
And thanks to you, dear friends, for tuning in.
Bye, friends.
Bye-bye.